They say the desert forgets no secret, that every whispered confession is buried in the sand, waiting to be uncovered again by the wind. I didn't believe that once. I thought time and distance would wear it all away. His touch, his voice, the way he looked at me when no one else dared to. But here I am, years later, standing at the edge of that same stretch of golden dunes, and I swear, I can still feel him. The heat curls around my skin like memory. The horizon trembles in the sun's haze, the same way my body used to when he spoke my name. I never belonged here. Not really. I was a stranger with good intentions and naive eyes, sent to assist with diplomatic logistics, barely fluent in the language, utterly lost in a world of tradition and shadows. And he was everything I wasn't. Power incarnate. A prince wrapped in silk and steel. They called him the Falcon behind closed doors. To the public, he was unshakable. But in private, when the guards turned away, when the lanterns burned low, he was just a man. A man who let me see the parts of himself no one else could. I had no right to want him. No right to need him. And yet, when he touched me for the first time, I stopped caring about right and wrong. It wasn't lust that ruined me. It was the way he taught me to feel. To be seen. To be held. His name still lives on my lips like a prayer I dare not say aloud. But when the wind brushes past me, soft and dry and familiar, I know it remembers him too. I had no right to love him, but the Sheikh taught me how to love. I stepped off the plane with a suitcase that didn't quite close, and a head full of things I thought I understood. I'd read the briefing documents, memorized the etiquette guides, even practiced the right way to bow. Not too deep, not too familiar, but nothing prepared me for the weight of the heat or the silence of the city beneath it. The capital was all stone and sunlight, old-world grandeur standing tall against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Domes shimmered like mirages, minarets pierced the heavens. The air was heavy with the scent of dates and jasmine, and something else I couldn't place. Maybe ancient pride, maybe dust. Everything moved slower, like the heat had pressed its palm down on time itself. I'd come here for work, part of a small Western administrative team attached to the Ministry of Cultural Affairs. Mostly, I was supposed to stay out of the way, answer emails, prepare reports, smile without saying too much, a foreign body in a system that didn't need me. The first few weeks were a blur of lost taxis, polite smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes, and a loneliness I hadn't expected. People were kind, but distant. I was watched more than I was spoken to. My Arabic was awkward at best, and though I tried, I always felt like a guest overstaying his welcome. The palace loomed at the city's edge, carved into the cliffside like a jewel lodged in the rock. It belonged to him, though I didn't know that yet. Not really. I'd heard his name, Sheikh Amir al-Farid, the Crown Falcon, a reformist, a traditionalist, a mystery wrapped in white robes and veils of expectation. People said he walked the line between past and future with impossible grace. Others said he was a myth, more symbol than man. The first time I saw him, he wasn't announced. He didn't arrive in a cavalcade of black cars or with an entourage. I was in the ministry courtyard, pretending to look over budget spreadsheets under a fig tree, when a silence fell like a veil. People stood a little straighter. Even the birds seemed to still. He walked through the corridor like he owned the sky, tall, poised, dressed in flowing robes of cream and gold. His keffiyeh was held by a circlet of black rope, his face partly shaded, but not enough to hide the sharp cut of his cheekbones or the cool distance in his eyes. There was something in the way he moved, like a dancer who'd never learned to stumble. Regal, but not arrogant. Controlled, but alive. Our eyes met for half a second. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. Just looked. And I, stupidly, forgot how to breathe. I told myself later that it meant nothing. A passing glance. A moment of curiosity. He was a man used to being watched. I was a man not used to watching anyone like him. But something lodged inside me that day. A splinter, buried deep. A question I didn't know I'd spend the rest of my time there trying to answer. Who was he really? And why, in a land I didn't belong to, under a sun I didn't understand, did that one man feel more real to me than anything else? It happened on a Wednesday. The ministry was buzzing over something. I never found out what. Men in tailored suits whispered in corners. Women in silk abayas typed furiously at laptops. I kept my head down, reviewing a translated draft of a museum proposal. My job was quiet, clerical, invisible. Until I made a mistake. There was a clerical error on a form, a mix-up between two restoration sites that could have rerouted a significant portion of government funding. It wasn't mine, not directly, but I caught it, flagged it, corrected it. I didn't expect anyone to notice. I certainly didn't expect the deputy minister to march into my office like a storm and ask, "Who found this?" I stood up, half afraid. I was about to be deported. Instead, she nodded once. "You may have saved us a great deal of embarrassment." I didn't think much of it until the next morning, when a folded note, yes, an actual paper note, was left on my desk. "You are invited to the Sheikh's private reception. Attire, formal. Discretion, expected." I read it 3 times before the weight of the words hit me. My heart galloped in my chest. A private reception. With him. That night, I stood outside the palace, dressed in the only suit I owned, feeling like I was being marched into a dream. Security was discreet but omnipresent. Men in crisp uniforms with watchful eyes. The walls of the palace were even more beautiful up close, carved with script I couldn't read and lit by lanterns that shimmered like fireflies. The reception wasn't large. Maybe 30 people. Diplomats, scholars, wealth, power. Everyone looked like they belonged. I didn't. And then he entered. Sheikh Amir al-Farid. This time, not in flowing robes but in a tailored midnight suit that clung to him like dusk. His keffiyeh was gone. His dark hair swept back, his jaw clean-shaven. Every movement was practiced, precise, powerful. When he began greeting guests, I positioned myself near the back, hoping to disappear. He saw me anyway, walked straight toward me. The crowd seemed to hush in his wake. I stood frozen, unsure if I should bow or speak or simply vanish. But he only said, "You have a careful eye." Not many would have caught that mistake. His voice was deep, smooth, measured like rainfall. "I just did my job, Your Highness." He tilted his head. "You're modest. That's rare." Then came the smile. Not wide, not full, but real. And private. A flicker of something unguarded. He leaned in, voice lower. "Do you play chess?" It wasn't a metaphor. At least I didn't think it was. "Yes," I lied. "Good," he said. "Come to the library tomorrow night. Bring your mind." And just like that, he was gone, moving on to the next guest as though the floor hadn't just disappeared beneath my feet. I stood there, dazed, one thought repeating in my head like a heartbeat. He saw me. The palace library wasn't just a room. It was a cathedral of silence, domed ceilings painted with constellations, shelves that seemed to stretch into eternity, and books so old they smelled of earth and time. I arrived early, foolishly, and stood by a grand window, heart pounding like I'd snuck into a place I didn't belong. I kept thinking someone would appear, ask what I was doing there, and escort me back to the ministry. Back to my small gray apartment, and my small gray life. But then he entered, quiet as a thought. He didn't wear a robe this time, nor a suit, just a simple linen shirt and slacks, barefoot on the marble floor. Somehow that made him more dangerous. Stripped of the symbols of power, he was only a man, and yet more commanding than ever. "I hope you weren't waiting long," he said, moving toward a low table with a chessboard already set. "I thought you might not come," I admitted, instantly regretting my honesty. He gave a faint smile. "I never offer an invitation I don't intend to keep." We played. Or rather, he played. I spent most of the game trying to keep up. Between moves, he asked questions, not about politics or policy, but about me, where I grew up, what I studied, why I came here. And each answer I gave, he studied like it was a move on the board. He never offered much in return, just small pieces. That he liked silence, that he preferred the stars to the sun, that as a child he wanted to be a poet until duty taught him to forget softness. After 2 hours, he moved his knight and said, "Checkmate." I stared at the board, stunned. "You've played this before." He looked at me with something like mischief. 1,000 times, but never quite like this. That night didn't end with a kiss. No lines were crossed, but something began, unspoken, fragile, and undeniable. He invited me again, and again, sometimes for chess, sometimes to walk the palace gardens under moonlight, where fountains whispered and vines curled around ancient stone. He took me to a hidden courtyard once, filled with white lilies and fig trees, a place even the staff didn't speak of. His sanctuary, he called it. We sat there week after week, hidden among the petals. "This place," I said one night, "feels like a dream." "It's the only place I feel real," he answered, eyes on the moon. In that garden he wasn't a sheikh. I wasn't a foreigner. We were two men surrounded by growing things. That's where I saw the first crack in him, the loneliness under the surface, the exhaustion of being watched, worshipped, obeyed, but never known. One evening, he handed me a book of poetry, old, hand-bound, the leather worn. Inside were handwritten translations, his own, of love poems in Persian and Arabic. "Some of these are about men," I whispered, flipping through. He looked at me. "Love doesn't ask permission to exist, only forgiveness." I couldn't speak, not then. My chest felt too tight. He reached for a fig, broke it open with his fingers, and handed me half. Our hands touched, just barely, but long enough. That night, I lay awake in my apartment, tasting fig and regret. I wanted him. But I didn't just want his body. I wanted his truth, his freedom, his secrets. I wanted to touch the version of him he hid from the world, and I feared what would happen if I tried. But in that secret garden, week after week, the air between us grew heavier, and in every silence, in every glance held just a second too long, something bloomed, not lust, something far more dangerous. It happened the night the rains came. They were rare in the capital, brief, moody things that swept in like ghosts and vanished by dawn. That night, the wind bent the palms and the sky cracked with thunder. I remember watching it through the tall windows of the palace library, waiting, unsure if he'd come. But he did. Drenched from the storm, robes soaked through and clinging. To him, dark hair unruly, eyes shining like wet obsidian. He looked real. Not the sheikh, not the falcon. Just Amir. I rose to meet him, but he lifted a hand. "Don't speak," he said. "Just walk with me." We crossed the corridors. Barefoot, the silence between us filled with the rush of wind and distant drums of thunder. The servants were gone, or told to stay away. The palace felt hollow, like a stage after the final curtain has fallen. He led me back to the secret garden. Our garden. But it was soaked. Rain pooled in the marble cracks. Lilies hung heavy with water. He stepped into the storm anyway, not caring that his robes dragged through the mud. I followed. In the center of the courtyard, he turned to me. The rain was cold on my skin, but my blood ran hot. "I used to believe I was made of stone," he said, "that it was the only way to carry everything they expect of me." His voice cracked, barely, but I heard it. "I've spent my life being worshipped or feared. Never seen." Lightning flashed, and for a second I could see every muscle in his jaw clenched tight, every war he was fighting inside himself. "I see you," I whispered. "I have since the beginning." His eyes met mine, wild with something between terror and hunger, and then he kissed me. No hesitation, no testing the waters, just a surge of desperate, aching need. His hands found my face, mine, his waist. The rain tasted like silver between us, our mouths searching, colliding, learning. It wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was every silence between us breaking open. We kissed like we were drowning. Like the rain wasn't enough to quench whatever fire we'd been hiding from. Like two men who knew this moment could never last, so they carved eternity into a single breath. When he finally pulled away, his forehead rested against mine, and I realized we were both trembling. "This cannot happen again," he said. Voice ragged. I nodded. But I didn't believe him. "Your world doesn't allow it," I said. "No," he whispered. "But my heart does." He left me standing there, alone in the garden, soaked to the bone, heart shattered and whole at the same time. I knew the rules, knew the weight of his crown and the walls that kept him walled in. But none of it mattered anymore, because after that kiss, I wasn't just in love with him. I was his. And I think, in some impossible secret way, he was mine too. In public, we were distant again. A glance here, a nod there, just enough to remain civil, but never enough to be noticed. The garden, the kiss, the whispered confessions under stormlight, they were hidden away like contraband. And the world outside? It saw nothing. Not the way his eyes lingered on me in council meetings. Not the subtle brush of his fingers against mine as he handed me a folder. Not the nights I'd slip through hidden hallways into the eastern wing, where the guards looked away and the air was thick with everything unspoken. He taught me how to live in silence, how to find meaning in the smallest gestures, a note pressed into my hand during a formal reception, a pressed flower tucked into my notebook. One evening, he left a single word on my desk in careful Arabic script, Sheikh, lover. It was the first time he'd named what we were, and still, we told no one. We had to tell no one, because to be seen was to be destroyed. I was not just foreign. I was male. A quiet scandal waiting to happen. He was a prince, a future king. His image was sacred, his life not entirely his own. If it came out, if even a rumor slipped, it wouldn't just cost us our jobs. It could end lives. His, most of all. Sometimes I hated him for how well he played his role, for how convincingly he could laugh with diplomats and stand beside his arranged fiancée without his voice cracking. Yes, fiancée. It was political, of course, strategic. But still, the first time I saw them in a photo together, something inside me broke. That night, I drank alone in my apartment until my hands stopped shaking. When I confronted him days later, I expected denial, distance, maybe even dismissal. Instead, he closed the door to his private study and said softly, "I'm doing what I must so I can keep what little I have left." I looked at him. "And what's that?" He didn't answer. Just walked toward me and pressed his forehead against mine like he had that night in the rain. "You," he said. "I have you. We lived in stolen time. An hour in the library, 10 minutes in the garden, a night in the shadowed corner of his private wing. Always hidden, always aware of the clock. The world outside knew nothing. But inside our silence, life was blooming. He showed me tenderness in a world where tenderness could be a crime. He taught me how to read love into the way he poured tea, into the verses he recited from memory, into the way he listened, truly listened, when I spoke of home. Sometimes, when the weight of it all was too much, we would lie beside each other, wordless, just breathing. "I'm not afraid of dying," he said once, voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm afraid of dying without ever being truly loved." "You are," I told him. "By me." The world outside never saw us. But in those quiet, secret moments, we were more real than anything it could ever invent. It couldn't last. Of course, it couldn't. I had always known somewhere in the background noise of every perfect moment that this story was written in sand, beautiful, fleeting, and doomed to vanish with the next strong wind. But knowing it doesn't make the end hurt any less. The pressure started quietly. Foreign rumors whispered in high places, questions about the Western aid who kept turning up in unexpected corridors. The ministry began watching me more closely. A memo was sent about protocol violations, vague and ominous. Amir became harder to reach. His meetings multiplied. His guards changed. His expressions grew heavier. And then, one night, he didn't come. No message. No explanation. I waited in the library until dawn, heart in my throat, mind playing every possible scenario. From a coup to an arranged marriage rushed forward. 2 days later, a driver summoned me to a remote villa outside the city. I recognized the stone arches and fig trees as soon as we arrived. It was his childhood home, rarely spoken of. He waited in the garden, alone, under a canopy of stars. He looked tired. More than tired, hollowed out. "They know," he said. "Who?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "My father," he finally whispered. "The council, my cousin, my fiancé's family. They won't confront me publicly, not yet. But they've drawn the line, and you're on the wrong side of it." I felt the words like cuts. Not deep at first, but sharp enough to know they'd bleed later. "So what happens now?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. He turned toward me, slowly. His eyes shimmered with something far more dangerous than fear. Grief. "I can't protect you anymore," he said. "They'll find a way to discredit you. Or worse." I waited for the inevitable. For him to say it was over. That I had to leave. That it had all been a beautiful illusion, and now it was time to wake up. But instead, he said something I'll never forget. "Come with me." I blinked. "What?" "I've made arrangements. There's a coastal village. No titles, no cameras, no shadows. If we leave now, tonight, we disappear. You and me." It should have been a dream come true. But I looked at him and saw the toll it had already taken, the weight of exile he would carry, the legacy he would abandon, the history he would rewrite just to be free, just to be mine. "You'd give it all up?" I asked. "For me?" His silence was the answer, and it nearly broke me, because I realized I couldn't let him. "You're not just a man, Amir," I said. "You're hope. You're change. People need you. They believe in you." He reached for me, voice raw. "And I believe in you. In us." My hands found his. I memorized the feel of them. The way they trembled. The way they didn't want to let go. But I knew what I had to do. "I love you," I said, "enough to let you stay. Enough to walk away so you can walk forward." His breath caught. "Don't," he whispered. But I had already made my decision, and as the stars blurred in the sky above us, I turned from the man I loved more than life and walked back into a world that would never truly hold me again. It's been 5 years. I live by the sea now. A quiet town where no one asks questions, and the wind smells like salt instead of sand. I teach history at a local university. I wear linen shirts and drink too much black coffee. Sometimes I laugh. Sometimes I don't. People assume I came here for peace, and maybe I did. But peace, I've learned, is not the same as forgetting. I haven't forgotten. The world moved on. Headlines were written. Amir became king 3 years ago. Young, unmarried, revered. There was speculation, always is. But he gave them nothing. No scandal. No weakness. Only grace and strength, and that same silence that once made me love him. I saw the coronation on a grainy live stream. He wore white. Eyes steady. Mouth unyielding. But I could tell. Even across continents. Even through a screen, he was looking for me. He never found me. Not exactly. But a letter arrived 6 months ago. No return address. Handwritten. The garden still blooms. The lilies return every spring. And the fig tree, our fig tree, bears sweeter fruit than ever. I have not spoken your name aloud since you left, but the wind does. And the sand remembers. I cried when I read it. Not loudly. Not like in the movies. Just quiet tears. The kind that fall from a place too deep for sound. Because the truth is, some loves never leave you. They become the architecture of your soul. The way you stand, the way you breathe, the way you say nothing when you want to scream. We had 1,000 stolen moments. We had a garden the world never saw. We had a kiss in the rain that rewrote the shape of my life. And we had a choice. I made mine. And I don't regret it. He stayed. He rose. He led. The world will remember him as a king. But the sand will remember him as a man. And I will remember him as the only one who ever looked at me, not with desire or curiosity or confusion, but with understanding. I had no right to love him. But he taught me how to love. And that was enough.